You know, this COVID crisis has impacted all of us in different ways. We are all having to adjust our businesses, our lifestyles, and the way that we actually live at home. It's been challenging, and I do hope that one day we all can look back on this and say, we learned something important from this whole experience. I really want to hold space today, though, for the frontline workers, because I can't imagine what they're dealing with and working through right now. I mean, I interviewed an ICU doctor a few weeks back, and he's taking care of COVID patients on the front lines. And he talked about the strain, especially the mental strain it's putting on healthcare workers. But one of the things that will stay with me always is he said that his nose and the cheeks of many healthcare workers are deeply bruised because those N95 masks are just so darn tight. Okay, it may sound like a small thing in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the work that they're doing and the lives that they're trying to save, but it's just one of those things that will stay with me always. My guest today is familiar with the reality of the situation and beyond because she is working daily with the most fragile in this circumstance. She's a registered nurse by trade. She is an entrepreneur, and she is the creator of 3 long-term care homes called ExquisiCare. It's a concept she created herself, so she's a business owner as well. And she describes our seniors this way, and I'm going to quote her because it was so beautiful how she said this. She said, "They are our community's greatest treasures. They fought in wars, they raised families, they were entrepreneurs, they were laborers and community leaders. They deserve to be treated with respect and dignity and recognition of their contributions and sacrifices. They've earned the right to have the finest level of care and attention that we can provide." My guest today is Dawn Harsch. She has received a number of awards for her work, and amongst them, one of Edmonton's top 20 future business leaders. Dawn, I'm so thrilled that you are stepping into the inner circle today. Welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I didn't intend
I
to start off crying, but you know, when I talk about what we started here, it gets me choked up.
I'm so glad that it does, because you've created something beautiful, and we are going to dig into that. But I want to begin with this simple question. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay now. You know what? We've been very fortunate at ExquisiCare because we are smaller. Not only could we react to the government orders quickly, we were actually ahead of them. I had the benefit when I was working with AHS for a number of years of being on the pandemic planning committee. And I can't say that I knew exactly what to do, but I clearly had some subconscious knowledge, and intuition just kicked in. So right away, we limited staff working between different sites because I knew that was a risk. We had our staff wearing masks well ahead of being told that they had to. We limited visitors coming in well ahead of when we were told we had to. So all of our residents are doing really well. The staff are amazing. But I resonate with the ICU doc. My nurses are complaining with the mask because they're all getting acne around their mouth.
Oh, gosh. So just explain quickly, because I didn't, from a nurse's perspective, they have to be that tight, right?
The N95 masks do have to be that tight. So there's a difference between the N95 and just the surgical masks. The N95 masks, they do have a seal around them. So when you're working with a known COVID patient, because it is spread through droplets, you want a complete seal for safety. When you're working with a vulnerable population, the reason for wearing that mask is sort of reversed. So that doctor's wearing that N95 mask to protect himself from the patient with COVID. Mm-hmm. Nurses working in long-term care are wearing masks to protect the patients from them in case they may have COVID, but it's not yet symptomatic.
Okay, we're going to dig into your business model later, but I want to talk about you're working with the most fragile, long-term care. How is your population? Have there been any COVID-related deaths? What are you seeing and experiencing?
Well, certainly not. We're small. You know, we only have 20, soon to be 30 beds in Edmonton, and we haven't seen any yet. And you know what? I think in and around Edmonton, we've been pretty fortunate. We haven't seen certainly what they've seen in Calgary, or worse yet, what they've seen in Quebec and Ontario. But there's a reason for that.
And that reason is?
So the reason for that is that, my mantra has always been we should not be institutionalizing our parents. That institutional model of care I have been forever against. And this pandemic is really bringing to light why it doesn't work. Not only is it disrespectful and inhumane, we shouldn't be institutionalizing warehousing our parents, but the physical infrastructure of it just doesn't work. You can't have 2 or 4 or even 6 elderly people sharing a room with a shared bathroom and control infectious disease. You can't. Those facilities have a higher incidence of the seasonal influenza and other infectious diseases just because of the infrastructure. So, you caught me on an interesting day. I'm a little frustrated right now because of the reaction of our government. While they're trying to do the right thing by supporting government funded care, they're completely leaving private operators out of that support and throwing more money at an already broken system. We all know that doesn't work. There needs to be transformational change of senior care. Institutional models just don't work. Residential models are what we need to be moving towards.
I'm glad that you're speaking out and using your voice in this regard, because this message needs to be heard as you live and know every single day.
Yeah. I used to kind of tippy-toe around it, didn't want to speak poorly about the infrastructure that we have in place. And it's not about the people, because the people working in long-term care, they're good people. They're working hard. They're doing the best they can. They've got great hearts. The system is broken. It is not okay. And if anything good is coming out of the pandemic, there's a lot of awful things, but I try to find some good, and there are some good things. And I really do hope that this wakes people up to the fact that, again, it is not okay to institutionalize our parents. It needs to change.
Before we dig into your business model, you have, like you said, a residential model for long-term care. But I need to understand, I love the fact that you were prepared and you were taking all these steps before they were implemented. But how crazy has this process been for you? Because it seems to me, from the outside looking in, this information changes daily. Like, is that what you're living and experiencing? Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, not only does it change daily, but at the outset, it was changing hourly. Oh. I would write communication to the families, and I had to start putting times on the memos, because I would listen to a press conference and hear these directions. And then within 3-4 hours, it had changed. So, I can't say that it wasn't extremely stressful. And I do worry about the mental health of everybody through this. For senior care operators, and for the administrators, we don't get a lot of, people don't talk a lot about management, but it has been really hard. A lot of us in the first 6 weeks of the pandemic, I think I was just in reactionary mode. But you look now at some of the posts that you see on Facebook about what constant stress does to your body, and I'm experiencing all of those things. So the stress of this, I think we've started to settle into kind of a new normal. It's still not great. I still feel for our seniors, because they have much more limited interaction with their family. They can have some outdoor visits now. It's really hard on them, really hard on the staff. My staff are even limiting their lives strictly. Some of my staff are not even sleeping in the same bed as their husbands, because their husbands work at the hospital and they work with us, and they care so deeply about our seniors that they don't want to in any way risk the seniors that they care for. So it has been extremely stressful.
Oh my gosh, I can't.
That most nurses ever go through in their career.
Can't imagine. I really can't. Out of everything that you're going through, what's been the biggest challenge for you?
Managing the medical officer orders and making sure that we're complying to that has been a challenge. There's been so much. It's just every day there's something new that was coming into place. Again, now we're, over 2 months into this, it feels like we've settled into a new normal, but just, I guess, and this is part of being a nurse, but part of also being a business owner, is the weight that a business owner carries. Like, the lives of these people is on my shoulders, and my shoulders alone.
And I know that you carry that heavily, like the stress, the impact on your life. Do you want to go there? What's it been like? You said you're feeling all the classic symptoms, not only you business owner, nurse, but your mom as well. So tell us what's going on right now in your heart, your mind. What's the journey been like?
Yeah, I like to, I think I've always been one of those people that likes to say, I'm tough, I can handle it, I'm fine. Anybody. And I think I wear that persona outwardly. A lot of people think of me and think, oh, shit, she can handle anything.
Yeah.
You know what? We can't. And I think that it has, Jesus, it has, the stress that I felt throughout my life has sort of come out with some health issues that I've had. And so I am trying to be quite mindful of managing that stress and making sure that I tell people when I'm not okay.
I'm so glad that you're doing that. And since you opened the door to that, where you said stress had an impact on your life, let's dig into now, but let's talk life before business. We're going to move away from COVID and dig into your personal story. So you're a Saskatchewan girl, born and raised there. And I'm going to say, was the seeds planted young of entrepreneurialism?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, born and raised in Saskatchewan. Parents were very entrepreneurial. I think that, it's interesting. We all know that we are shaped by our parents and our upbringing. And I had two very hardworking parents. My mom actually took over her father's insurance business. So she was a business owner in small town Saskatchewan. And she was a hard worker. And I think that's one thing that I've always had drilled into me is you got to work hard. And so I've always been a hard worker. And, good and bad, I've gotten to where I am because I'm not scared of hard work. I'm not scared of getting things done, but sometimes need to maybe be a little easier on myself. And then my father actually, I'm so proud of both my parents, and they've taught me so much. So, mom being an entrepreneur herself, going to work, my brother and I wouldn't say we raised ourselves, but she was at work. And so we took care of ourselves, and it taught us to be really independent. She was also a single mom, essentially, although my parents are still together and very happy. My dad always worked on pipeline. So he was gone most of the time. So here she is running an insurance company, raising two kids while my dad's off working. And, my dad has a really interesting story as well. And I've always said he's kind of my hero. He was in a car accident when he was 18. So prior to even meeting my mother, and lost both of his legs from the knees down. So he's a double leg amputee, but he has never complained a day in his life about his plight. I was told that, he was told, you will never walk again. You will never work again. And my dad's, I think I'm a lot like him. I said, you watch me. And that's what he said. He said, you know what? I'm not accepting this. And so he's always been a very hard worker. And he's always just kind of moved up and moved on. And I admire that tremendously.
And that's back in a day when I have to say, like, would he have been fitted with wooden legs? Had they moved beyond that for prosthetics, or no? They would have been wooden legs, right?
Yeah. And in fact, still has them, but talking about a different, I've always imagined him with those Blade Runner things. Too old when those came out.
Well, I'm going to hold space for you, because when you say you and your brother pretty much raised yourself, I mean, that's the way it was back in the day. Your parents worked and you had to be self-sufficient.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, because it taught us to be independent. It taught us to take care of ourselves. And again, no disrespect. Obviously, our parents were there and they were helping us make. Of course. But I appreciate that.
Talk about your health issues. Did they start at a young age?
Yeah. Probably, how old would I have been? Early 20s, I noticed that I had something called amenorrhea. So I stopped getting a period, and was told at about, so kind of challenged with that. I was getting hot flashes, and I thought, what the heck's going on? Went and saw my GP, and she said, oh, it's nothing, just go on birth control and it'll regulate your hormones. So that's what we did, and didn't really think much of it. Although, I think looking back on it, in my gut, I knew something was wrong. And then at 26, I knew for sure, and I wanted to investigate what was wrong. And I was in nursing school, or had I graduated? I think I had graduated by then. So long story, I was told that I had something called premature ovarian failure, So there's really no reason for it. It is stress related sometimes, as a lot of autoimmune issues are. And I've since been diagnosed with another one. So, it was devastating to be told at that age that I would probably never have children, and that I would deal with this forever, and hot flashes. So like, if you ever hear a perimenopausal or menopausal woman complaining that she feels crazy, you do feel crazy. Like, you want to kill somebody. There's this heat that starts in your chest. And I was going through that at 25 and 26. So.
Oh my gosh, that is too much. How do you get something like this? How does somebody, is it hereditary?
Well, I don't know. My mom had a few autoimmune challenges. And again, they don't really understand why it happens. There are some links to other autoimmune issues. And so then, geez, through the course of my business and opening the business, I mean, it was stressful. We had the cardinal sin of putting up our house to start our business. And they say entrepreneurs should never do that. So, there were personal guarantees. It's very stressful. There's investment in what we do with the business. A lot of stress, a lot of that resting on my shoulders. If this business goes wrong, I bankrupt my family. It was a stretch. A lot of people told me it would fail, but I did it anyways because I believed in it. So, and I kept that stress inside. And then when I was probably about 2 years into the business, I was working out with a girlfriend and I couldn't do push-ups. And I used to be super fit. I used to run marathons. And she said, I don't know, this is weird. Like, how can I not do 10 push-ups? Long story, had a bunch of other symptoms, was originally ended up in the emergency department one night. And I never wish that on anybody, but it's especially eye-opening as a nurse.
Can you share your symptoms with us to educate us so we understand, in case anyone's listening and they can relate?
Yeah, so weakness, just extreme weakness, and easily fatigued muscles. I also had a lot of tingling and numbness, especially on the right side of my face. My eye was drooping, the right side of my mouth was drooped. Sometimes I'd smile and I'd look like I had a stroke. And in fact, my symptoms got so bad one night that I thought, holy cow, I'm either having a stroke or I have a brain tumor or something. And, you have a little one peeking in.
Reality of working from home. It's all good.
All good, sorry. And here's the thing. I actually didn't want to go to see a doctor when I knew I was having these symptoms, because as a business owner, I wasn't backed by the company life and disability benefits. And so I had life insurance. You need as a business owner. A lot of banks will ask for that when you're taking out a huge loan, but I didn't have critical illness insurance. And I've realized now that that's actually more important, because critical illness insurance, you're still alive and you need to keep living and you're still going to have expenses. So I had not gone to see a doctor, even though I knew I had these symptoms, but they got so bad one night that I just said, okay, this is ridiculous. I have to go. So went to the hospital, and I was actually told that night that I probably had MS.
Oh my gosh. How did you process? I know that, were you a nurse at this point? I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Yeah, no.
Okay, but
6 years ago or so. Yeah.
How did you process that?
Not well. When I was with AHS for a number of years, I was the director of the renal program. And then I went off on mat leave. I did have 2 beautiful twins with an egg donor from my cousin, who I just am forever grateful to her. And then when I went back to AHS, I was the director of neurosciences. So I am all too familiar with MS and how it progresses. And so when I was told that,
there's no words, right? It must have had a massive impact.
Yeah, I had some very dark thoughts.
Oh, I don't blame you, and especially with your level of understanding of it from a scientific point of view, that's just not easy to process.
Yeah. But the good news is it's not MS. So, the health system worked very well for me. I got in for an MRI very quickly because it was an emergency and we wanted to figure this out. And the neurologist at the time was phenomenal. I remember she called me on Christmas Eve to tell me that it was not MS, that it was probably a disease called myasthenia gravis. And it's, the Latin terminology for that, or the Latin interpretation, is grave muscle weakness. And it usually exhibits in the face. So droopy eye, droopy mouth, like the whole side of your face can droop. A lot of my symptoms were around my mouth and not being able to speak, or not being able to speak well. It can be deadly if your lungs are involved. Thankfully, my case hasn't been that bad. I actually underwent something called I fought it for a long time. My neurologist want me to have a thymectomy. So a thymectomy, a lot of people, when I say that, they think of thyroid. So your thyroid is just kind of at the bottom of your neck. Your thymus is right underneath your chest bone. And your thymus gland is actually responsible for creating your immune system, and it should shrink. That gland should shrink when you're in your teenage years. So they find with people who have autoimmune diseases that the thymus gland is actually enlarged. Sometimes there is a benign tumor there that causes that thymus gland to be enlarged, which therefore creates a heightened immune system. And so I fought it for a long time. I went through a number of really disgusting treatments that made you feel like absolute shit, called IVIG treatment, et cetera. And they didn't really help me. So I finally agreed to this surgery. But going into the surgery, you have to consent to both a scope. So that's easy. That's like 4 little incisions on the side of your body. And but you also have to consent to an open surgery where they cut you from the bottom of your neck down to the middle of your stomach. And they crack your ribs and they open you up just like open heart. So
what?
Yeah, I had to consent to that because they said, even though we're going to try it by a scope, if something goes wrong, we may have to open you up. So I was terrified going into that because I thought, here's my main thought was I need to go back to work the next day. I cannot.
Oh, Dawn.
I cannot have my chest open because it'll take too long to recover from that. So I distinctly remember waking up in the recovery room and just touching my chest and seeing if I was still intact. And thank goodness I was.
So the surgery was a success.
It took a while. They say that you don't actually see the benefits of it for some. I think I had that surgery in 2015 or 2016. And I am almost in remission now. I don't see many of the symptoms of the myasthenia gravis. And here's the interesting thing. I no longer get eczema. And I used to get eczema, which is also sort of an immune issue. A lot of my other autoimmune sort of issues have gone away because of that thymus being removed. So benefit.
All in all, wow. I love the explanation and the way that you can give it because you have that scientific background. I need to go back a few years before this. And let me just say, I'm so glad that all worked out for you and you are doing well. But quick question though, does stress make it flare up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that because I should have said that. That is one of the biggest precursors to having a flare, so to speak, is stress. And, every time I see my neurologist, she talks about how are you managing your stress? And I laugh and I said, not. I'm all those things. And even my premature ovarian failure, because there's no real reason for it. They don't understand why somebody's ovaries just quit working.
Right.
I think I said it earlier. I've just always been that person that always says, I'm fine.
And that's how you processed it. I know you've thrown a few things down that I need to dig into, but I just want to back up a bit and ask, why nursing? What was it about it? Because your dad opened a sporting goods store, did he not? And your mom, you have this unbelievable entrepreneurial path. And then all of a sudden you decide you want to be a nurse. Can you connect those pieces of the puzzle from your earlier years?
Yeah, it's interesting. My grandma, so my dad's mom was a nurse and I saw her nursing a little bit. I think my original draw to nursing was the potential for travel. So back when I graduated nursing, which was in 1994, I think, everybody was going to Texas. And I thought, that'd be so cool. Yeah. Or everybody was working up north and that'd be so cool. But partway into my nursing degree, I decided I was going to do an MBA. And I think I've probably always had an entrepreneurial sort of side to me. Started working when I was 12 years old. When I don't even know if it was legal, but again, always been on. And
what were you doing at 12?
Washing floors at the co-op.
Of course you were. Why does not any of this surprise me with you the way I know you? Okay.
Saskatchewan, yeah, Washington. And then I worked at restaurants and did catering and drive-ins and, and Dad he quit the pipeline for a period when my brother and I were in our teenage years. So he could be home with us. So we didn't raise ourselves. And he was home. But partway into my nursing degree, I decided I was going to do an MBA. So I have a master's in business as well, because I've always thought that healthcare is a really interesting field. I do have a very much of a caring side to me. I'm a caregiver. But what I saw in the hospitals was they took these great nurses and doctors and they said, you're a great doctor, you should run this place. Well, she's a great doctor. If she's a highly skilled clinician, let her be a clinician. Don't take her out of the role that she loves and make her manage budgets and contracts and people and strategy, because that's not her strength. And so I saw it as a bit of a disservice in healthcare that we take these great clinicians and we pull them out of what they love and make them run the joint. And so I did my MBA right after my nursing degree, always intending then to sort of go into more of the management side of it. And I actually wrote a business plan for ExquisiCare when I was doing my MBA.
Stop. Where did the idea come from?
Where did the idea come from? I worked in long-term care facilities when I was doing my degree. So I finished my nursing degree, and then I worked in sort of a doctor's office, a dermatology office. I was doing my MBA at night. So like Mondays and Wednesdays, we'd have class from 6 to 9. And then I also worked at a long-term care facility. I would work night shift. And so the other thing that I don't think I've mentioned that I do think is really important is sleep. And I was so sleep deprived, I would work from 9 to 5 at the office. I'd go to school from 6 to 9. I'd work a night shift from 11 to 7. I'd go back to work at the office from 9 to 5. And then I'd go home and crash for that entire night, like from 9 at night until 7 in the morning. And then I would do that process again.
Oh,
I thought, yeah, that's just not healthy. And I hear of young people doing that now. And I say, God, please don't do that. Like, I don't know if there's any science behind it, but that sort of sleep deprivation at that young age, you think you can handle that? But I really wonder, given my health issues, what that does to your body.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like you said, so many people do it in order to get things done. And I will say this, like my best friend is a nurse and she was one of those that went to Texas for work. But I really believe that those of you who pursue a profession in nursing and in healthcare, you get an extra gene for caring and for love and for sleep deprivation at times, because she would do crazy things too. We're working nights and then on to days. And I'm like, how can your body handle that? And for you doing your MBA at the same time, Dawn, that's nuts.
It's stupid. In hindsight, it's really stupid. And I probably shouldn't have done it, but you're young and you think that you can handle it because you can at the time. Go on and it doesn't really affect you. I certainly can't do it anymore. I still don't get enough sleep. I'm
going to give you some sleep aids I use. That's for a conversation for another time. But you finish your MBA, you write the business plan for ExquisiCare while you're studying. Now, can we please bring in your husband into this conversation because you married the love of your life?
Good. Yeah. So Corey and I met when I was just finishing my MBA. And I worked in Alberta Health Services, but I always talked about this little business plan that I had. And I wrote it when I was doing my new venture course in my MBA. And I think I wrote it because I was working in long-term care facilities and I saw the injustice. And I think what's one of the many things, like the infrastructure is not good, but there's a personal connection that's lacking. And so I kind of married my small town life where everybody knows you. You wouldn't dream of not giving the best care to Hilda because Hilda's daughter and you're going to see her at the co-op.
Agreed.
And so these big impersonal spaces, they're impersonal, and these are people that we're caring for. So my business plan, I wrote it, and I talked about it constantly from the time Corey and I met. And despite being an accountant and probably a little bit risk averse,
yes.
He believed in it. And he said, you know what? He says, this is your passion. You've always wanted to do this. and he's always been very supportive, and he's very much a part of the business. There's no way that I could have done this and could continue to do it without his support. He's the financial brain behind it. I can read a balance sheet, but it's not my forte. So he keeps us in line, and he wears the stress too. I recognize that although I'm operating it, it's hard on both of us.
Quick question before we move ahead with your personal story. Did your professors or whoever was looking at your business plan, did they see the value in it? Did they look at it and went, wow, this is big?
Yep. One of the professors did. So the guy that was actually teaching that course was a guy named Steyer. He was one of my favorite professors. But I also had, this is a really interesting story. I had a husband and wife team, and they've been real influencers and mentors to me throughout my whole life. Karen Caesar and Jim Bowlby, and they own a company called Hope Learning Systems. They were professors of mine when I was doing my MBA, and I stayed in contact with them for years and years afterwards. And then when all the changes came with Capital Health and the 9 regions that we had back in 2007 becoming one, I was talking to Karen, and I said, oh my goodness, I just saw, Sheila Weatherall walked out of her office, and I was on mat leave at the time. I thought I might not have a job to go back to. She said, oh, it'd be the best thing ever if you lost your job. And I went, huh? And she said, it would force you to do what you need to do, what you were put on this earth to do. You have this business plan. She says, you talk about it constantly. So she said, I hope you lose your job. And I'm like, well, that's not very nice. But I didn't lose my job. I actually had to find a way to exit. But that's what we did. It was a huge leap.
Wow. But that's such great. That advice probably served you in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, I will never forget that phone call with her where she said that to me, because
wow.
I wasn't intending to negotiate a way out until she said that. And then I thought, you know what, when am I ever going to get this chance again? And you hear people say that they have regrets, or I just didn't want to go to my grave never trying this.
Oh. Did everybody hear that? Listen, write it down what Dawn just said. If you have a dream, don't take it to your grave. Make it happen. Okay, back to you and Corey. Did you start the business pre-kids, post-kids? Because I know you don't like the touchy-feely emotional stuff, but you kind of just threw in where it was like, yeah, we had my twins and it was egg donor, and then you kind of moved on. So I need to dig into that, because people, there's a big story here. If you'll go there with us, Dawn.
Yeah, no, the business was post kids.
Okay.
Really interesting. My grandpa passed away. My dad's dad passed away, and Corey married me knowing full well that kids probably weren't an option in the traditional fashion, but there's lots of ways to make a family. And it was funny, at my grandpa's funeral, I don't know about your family, but we sit around and drink at funerals.
Yes. We do too.
Chatting with some family that you never get to see. And I just mentioned it in passing, sort of at the table. And my one cousin said, oh, I'll give you some eggs if you need some. And I'm like, oh, that's a very bold offer just at the table.
Wow.
I followed up with her a couple of years later, and she said, I would be honored to do that for you. And so it's been just the greatest gift. So yeah. So
a couple years it took you to process that?
Probably, yeah. Because we went down a bunch of different roads and evaluated the options and decided that was what we were going to do. And it's a process, IVF. So she had to do the IVF in terms of the harvesting. And then, of course, I carried them. And I always say we got a 2-for-1 deal because we ended up with twins. So that was awesome.
Wow. What was that process like for you, having, like an egg donor? And I feel that this is important to get out to people listening, because family is the way you define it. And for people who are struggling, so many people think that the egg and the sperm have got to come from the two of you. Give us some perspective.
Yeah, not at all. I carried them. Yeah, family can be made in multiple different ways. And I just see it as the greatest gift that I will ever receive in my life. And we have an older daughter as well. She is my stepdaughter, but she's Corey's daughter. So she's in her 20s, and she's actually working in the hospital right now. So she's working in the ICU with the COVID patients. So
what's that like?
It's a great learning experience for her. She's working as a healthcare aide right now, and she's going to move on to nursing at some point, but she's learning a lot. And, I said to her, you are part of a moment in time that's going to be forever in our history. So take it all in and stay safe.
Wow, she's lucky that she has you to lean on. You keep answering these questions and dropping these bombs. And I'm like, I have to dig into this. I have to dig into that. So you had a boy and a girl?
Boy
You
and a
said
girl.
twins, right? Like how? Tell us more about them.
Oh, yeah. Kale and Mara, and they're awesome, and they couldn't be more different, and they're the best of friends and big enemies sometimes. And so we had them in 2007, and then while I was off on mat leave was when I saw the changes to Alberta Health Systems, which became Alberta Health Systems instead of Capital Health and all the other regions. And another gift that I had, which is amazing, was this nanny that we found. Her name's Bridget. She had previously cared for twins. So she came to work for us, and she's still a part of our life. Can't be more thankful for her. So I went back to work when the kids were a year, maybe a little bit over a year, and kind of went back with this intention of finding a way out so that we could start the business. But I went back, I worked in neurosciences. And it's funny how the world kind of just self-organizes. That's something that my friend always says, the world self-organizes. And so as I'm negotiating my exit, Bridget tells me that she's expecting. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. So I take my package from AHS. I'm at home with 2-year-olds trying to figure out my business plan and dragging my kids to meeting with lawyers. And like, I would not recommend that. That's really
wow.
With 2-year-olds. She goes off and has her baby. And then I decided, I'm like, I can't be at home with these two and open a business and deal with construction and whatever. So she came back to work, and she brought her daughter with her, Bianca, when Bianca was about 4 months. And Bridget was with us until the kids were in grade 1, and so thankful for her. So we started the business with toddlers as well. So
wow.
Whole sleep deprivation. And then actually when I went back to work, I worked for a long-term care facility in town here, both as a nurse and as a manager, just to kind of reintegrate myself into the system and learn more about how it was being done.
And those kiddos are now 13, right?
They'll be 13 in July.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's the same age as my son. Okay, so you launch your business, and you and Corey, you leverage everything. Tell us as an entrepreneur what that's like and why you still jump in with both feet, because there's lots of learning in this.
I keep saying the word stress, and I hate that word. You have to have a bit of faith just to take that leap. And sometimes it's just blind faith. And I had a business, so it's that blind faith, but it's also having the business knowledge to understand that this can be successful. So we had done the research, we had run the financials, the pro formas. I really believed there was an opportunity for what we do, which is private long-term care. If you look at the funded system, there's home care, there's assisted living, and there's long-term care. And that long-term care option, there was really only one option, which was government funded institutions. And I fully believed that people wanted something different. So it was somewhat of a leap. I mean, it was definitely a leap, but there was also a really strong belief that it was going to work, and not only in the model and that there was a demand for it, but also a belief that I could do it. Like I can make this happen. This will work. We did have a bit of a backup plan. The first home was designed to be easily retrofitted. So we kind of designed it with the intent of, if we knocked out this wall and this wall, we could easily turn this into a regular family home.
Okay, so for someone listening who's never heard of ExquisiCare, paint the picture for us, what it looks like, how you house patients. Give us the lowdown on it.
Yeah. So what I like to say is we are an alternative to institutional long-term care. We build residential, usually 10-bedroom estate homes. It's really important to me that our seniors be cared for and loved in true residential communities. Again, we should not be institutionalizing our elders. So these residential homes are in residential neighborhoods. They have neighbors. But there's 24/7 professional staffing. We have all of the equipment and knowledge, etc., to provide all levels of care. So assisted living up to long-term care and even palliative. I would say 95% of our folks actually pass away at home. And that's the way it should be. We don't want somebody to pass away on a stretcher in an emergency department. It's really important to me that when we take a family or a client in, that there's a value match with the values behind ExquisiCare and that family. And that's really about quality of life. So our average age right now is 93.
Oh, wow.
We're not here for heroics. We are here to respect and love and give them dignity and honor their family. And I believe those are the things that are most important to seniors of that age and to their families.
So essentially you have each patient has their own bedroom, and then are there communal areas like the kitchen and whatnot? How does that all work?
Yeah, exactly. So there's 10 bedrooms. Every client has their own bedroom, their own attached ensuite bath and a walk-in closet. And then the rest of the home is shared. So it functions and feels very much like a family home. But the staff working there are nurses. But they do the meal preparation. It's all homemade meals, all homemade, fresh made meals. So we don't believe in preservatives and pre-cooked things. Those things are higher in sodium. They're not heart healthy. So like we peel all the carrots, we cook them from fresh. And that alone makes it a much healthier environment.
Oh, I love everything you're saying. What happened when you opened your doors?
You know, the first time I toured through that home, I just broke down in tears. And again, I'm tough. That doesn't happen very often.
We got that. We know that.
And I work hard. So the first home was actually at about 60% occupancy when we opened, and it was full within 3 months. And then I had a significant wait list. So I felt great about that. Lots of learnings, lots of mistakes. I mean, things that I did early on when I think of, Jesus, that was stupid. You know, I shouldn't have done that. And then started planning for the second home right away. It took about 4 years to get actually built. So our second home, which is very closely situated to the first one, it's about 2 blocks away. That home was built specifically for people with dementia. So it is kind of I hate to say it, a locked facility, but there are safety measures in place.
Yes.
But here's the other interesting thing. For people with dementia, they can come to us from a facility where they had exit-seeking behaviors, where they had aggression, and they had all these other behaviors. They come to us and those behaviors are not as prevalent because it looks and feels and smells and acts like a home. So they don't feel the need to escape. A lot of times what we nurses know about quote unquote behaviors, I don't even like that term, behaviors of people with dementia is that behavior, which can be aggression or it can be calling out, that's related to an underlying unmet need. And often that unmet need is to be left alone. And so, you know, oftentimes in long-term care, unfortunately, you know, there's limited staff. And so the residents have to fit into the staff schedule. We do the opposite. This is their home. The homes are designed for them, first of all. It's designed for the client to make it comfortable and home-like for them. And we fit into their lives. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be the other way around.
It's such a beautiful concept. It really is. And I can relate. Like, I know when both my mom and dad, before they passed, we kept them in their own homes. We were able to as long as possible, because I remember my dad just pleading with us, please don't take me to the hospital. Please, please, please. And it just, when I think back, it still breaks my heart. But what you're saying, it validates exactly what you're saying with the care that you offer, you know, for long-term care, that they can feel like they're in a home and not an institution. So 2 homes, fully staffed, booked up, and now you're getting ready to launch a third. Is that right?
Yeah, it's almost done. Actually, it should be done within a month here. And I'm so excited for that one because we've got a beautiful yard on that one. The first 2 homes, they're these huge estate homes, but they don't have the biggest yards. So this home actually backs onto the North Saskatchewan River. It's got a beautiful yard. It's going to be for people that are totally cognitively intact. So we're going to have raised garden beds throughout. Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. Opening it in the middle of a pandemic will be interesting.
So are you going ahead as scheduled?
Yeah.
What challenges do you anticipate?
Well, the biggest challenge there is right now getting a license. So we're a licensed supportive living home. We're licensed by the Alberta government, and just haven't heard back really from Alberta
Mm.
yet on what that process is going to look like. But I don't really foresee it shouldn't be an issue because there's no clients there yet when they come in to do the initial license. So I think we'll be okay. But yeah.
Okay, so almost 3 homes, but you also have a home care business.
We do.
Okay, you got to tell us about that.
I can do it. So actually, I both blame and thank my husband for that one, because with the first home, we had this huge wait list and we were sending people to other home care companies to care for them. And I really wanted to be able to provide that full continuum of care. So when I kind of looked at home care, I thought it's an easy add-on to what we do already. It's called Care at Home by ExquisiCare. We go into people's homes. We can provide as little as 3 hours up to 24/7. For some people, staying at home, it sounds like you did that for your dad, is a beautiful gift. And we wanted to be able to do that. But again, everything that I do is with the underpinning of a professional caregiver. So I'm a registered nurse. My manager of my home care company is also a nurse. It's one thing to want to have a business, but we are in a business where we're taking care of people. So I believe it's professionally delivered. And I'm very proud of that. And so yeah, our home care company actually has grown substantially over the last few years.
How many employees do you have working for you?
It varies because the home care company, a lot of them kind of are on again, off again contractors, but I would say close to 60.
Oh my gosh, Dawn, that's like to start from where you did and grow it. That's amazing. Congratulations. And so you and your husband are in this together, right?
Yeah.
How does that work? Because I can relate to being part of an entrepreneurial family and having a business. So do share.
I'd love for you to share too. It works, and there's good things and bad things. There's challenges because at the end of my day, at 5 o'clock, I try and shut it off and I try and say, okay, I just don't want to think about work anymore, because the reality is it's always there. It's like this gerbil in the back of my mind. I am always thinking about work. I go to bed at night, I think about work. I wake up in the middle of the night. And he has a full-time job. He's a banker. So the work that he does to support the company is usually in the evenings and the weekends. And so that can sometimes be challenging. So it's like, I don't want to talk about that right now.
Right.
Yeah. So that managing it at home, and I think we need to get better at setting some limits around when we're going to talk work, when we're going to be family. Because it can't be all work or it's just completely consuming. I'm sure you understand.
Completely. That struggle is real. And I know it's the most common thing that couples who are in business together have to do, is to find those boundaries and what works. And it's not easy shutting it off. It really isn't, because you live and breathe it. You talked about earlier mistakes you've made along the way. And I feel that mistakes are so important to talk about because there's learning in them. And I know I always lean on other business owners to say, like, what mistakes did you make? What did you learn? What's the takeaway? Because I'll absorb that information and try to implement it into what I do. So can you share some of those and some of the takeaways along the way?
Probably the number one thing that I've learned is to trust my gut, because every time something has not turned out well, when I reflect back on it, I knew at the outset it wasn't going to go well. And I made the decision because of some sort of urgency to do that. So, the number one probably is hiring staff. Oh, I need a staff. I need one right now. I'm just going to hire this person. People, there's this saying, hire slow, fire fast. I cannot agree with that more. Actually, we just did performance reviews at both of our sites, and they were such awesome days. Like, I just have such amazing teams working with us. And I always use performance appraisals as an opportunity, not only to give them feedback, which is 99% awesome because they're all so good, but I also use it as an opportunity for them to give me feedback. So it's just, can we sit down and talk about how it's going at work? You're doing awesome. This is what you do really well, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything that I can do differently? And one of the staff said to me, she said, when you hired me, I had to go through like 4 sets of interviews and all the staff had to interview me and blah, blah, blah. And she said, you haven't been doing that lately. And I went, you're right. I did quit doing that. And I need to start doing that again. Because I used to make new team members go through quite a series to make sure that we were bringing the right people into the mix. They are fairly small operating units. And if you put one person in there who's not a good fit, and to me, it always goes back to values. Do they share the same values? And the staff tell me really quickly if we hire somebody that's not a good fit. So most of my mistakes, I would say, have been around hiring too fast and not hiring in line with our values.
Oh gosh, that's great advice, because those core values, they serve you well, and they never stop serving you if you remain true to them. I can't help, as I listen to you talk about your business, it's such a beautiful model. I can't help to allow my mind to ask this question: is there going to be a franchise of ExquisiCare in the future? Like, the model works, you've proven it. Is this on the radar? Like, what's the dream for you and Corey in ExquisiCare?
Yeah, you are very intuitive. Yeah, that is the dream. That has always been my dream. Was, I think our vision is to transform long-term care. Again, we should not be institutionalizing our parents. And so I would love to be able to share this model with other nurses like me who are frustrated working in long-term care, who are frustrated because they don't actually get access to their client because they're so busy doing paperwork or doling out medications, or they've got 12 people to care for in an hour's period. And so I would love to expand the ExquisiCare model. And in actual fact, we were quite a ways down the road of creating a franchise model prior to the pandemic. Actually had some very interesting people in 3 different cities across Western Canada. And I still do think it's a great thing to do. I don't know at this time, again, trying to manage my own stress, if I have capacity for it right now. I really do think that there's going to be a massive review. I hope that there's going to be a massive review of long-term care, and that they look to us for this model, because it works if it is professionally managed and if professional caregivers that are delivering that. So we have a physician, actually, a gerontologist named Dr. Paul Keevy, who is phenomenal, who provides medical oversight. So there's certain components of an ExquisiCare model, which is why I was leaning towards the franchise, so that we could ensure that same quality of personal and professional care was delivered at every ExquisiCare home. So long answer, franchising is the dream. Right now, I'm not sure if I can actually move forward with it, but you know what? This too shall pass. This pandemic, we all know and believe that there is going to be an end to it. So I will pick up where that work left off and move forward.
I'm going to be watching and cheering you on from the sidelines because of all of the amazing things that you've accomplished. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. But I do want to ask you this question. I love, Dawn, your tough exterior, but inside, the sensitivity you have, you wouldn't be doing the work that you do if you didn't care next level. And I can see it in the emotions when you talk about your patient and what you're going through. Stress has come up a lot in this conversation, and clearly it's having an impact. This is probably one of the most difficult things you've had to go through. How are you managing, and how do your saying has always been, I'm okay. You mentioned that to me pre-conversation, and is that still hold true? Because someone looking at you, we can see you. I want to just wrap my arms around you and give you a big virtual hug. But saying that you're okay, you're not okay right now. You've got a lot on your plate. Give us some perspective here.
I think your question was, how do I manage it? Poorly. Honestly, poorly. I mean, I started to try and set some limits around one of the limits that I've set is when staff and clients can access me. I mean, I sleep with my phone, and if it dings in the middle of the night, I'll answer that text. So trying to tell my staff, can you please not text me at 1 a.m? I know that question is top of mind for you at that time, but I am attempting to sleep. Honestly, Carrie, I wish I was better at it. This pandemic is much harder on people than I think that we all realize. I'm exercising. I mean, we're fortunate we got Peloton for Christmas, so we're using that a lot. Trying to get out walking with the dog, and just trying to be a little bit more real with myself. I mean, 2-3 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, we're going to go hard on this franchise. Now's the time. There's a need for it. People are really crying out. But I have sort of put it a little bit on the back burner for now, because I can only do so much. We all can only do so much. And so I want to be really mindful of caring for the people that we have right now under our care, and making sure that we continue to do a great job with them. So yeah, it's setting limits. I don't know. I can't say I do it well.
It's a journey, and I want to commend you for your vulnerability, because I know so many other healthcare workers who the stress level is through the roof right now. And it's important that we understand that's what you're going through, and that we all have that sensitivity to you. And I admire you for your strength in answering the question the way that you did, to say that, geez, like, I don't even know how it cannot be tough. I'm watching from the sidelines, and I get choked up every time I hear an interview with a healthcare worker, what they've gone through and what they're seeing. So I admire your strength in sharing that and saying that it's not an easy thing to navigate. And I think more people need to hear that message, so they get strength from what you're going through.
Thank you very much.
Dawn, I want to ask you, close with this question. Are you living your dream?
You know what, I am. I think that this is what I was put on the earth to do.
That's powerful. And it's just full stop. That's the end. And, you know, I will say I grew up in a culture where my Oma and Opa doll and Oma and Opa Beagle got the utmost of respect. And they were, I always called them my Google. I used to go over and pick raspberries with my, with both of them, and the things, the stories they would tell me have helped shape me and resonate with my life. I want to thank you for the gift that you're giving so many families out there that get to be cared for underneath your business model and your employees. And I want to ask you this final question is, what's the most beautiful compliment that you've ever received from families, from a patient, that reminds you daily what you're going through is it's validation?
That's a tough question. You know what? So many of our families are just so grateful that they have their loved ones with us at any time, but especially now during this pandemic. I don't know if I can, you know, quote one per se, but just that gratitude from families. You know, it's funny because my husband says, "Oh, people don't thank me for what I do." He's a banker, and I do get, I do get a lot of praise and thanks from the families that we serve, and just for giving their mom or their dad a really respectful and loving experience for the last 6 months, 24 months of their life. So, you know, it is tough, especially this business owner, when you're on 24/7. When I hear that from families, how thankful and grateful they are, it does make it worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. I want to extend that gratitude back to you and to your team, and to, I'm sure, everybody listening right now, to wrap their arms around you virtually and say, we appreciate you. We appreciate everything you are doing and the change that you're creating in this world. I agree with you. Our parents shouldn't be institutionalized. So thank you for blazing a trail. I'm going to be interested to see where you take this. We're going to be cheering you on. And thank you for the vulnerability that you have shown in painting the reality of what life is like, because we're not on the front lines. We don't understand, but we appreciate the perspective that you have given us all today. My heartfelt gratitude and thanks to you for stepping into the inner circle today.
Thank you, Carrie. It was a pleasure.